Good evening, I'm Kathy Lewis, and this is What Matters, a new local public affairs show joining the Friday night lineup here at WHRO. The bar is set pretty high when you're in the company of such great shows as Washington Week, Bill Moyer's Journal, Now, and Tavis Smiley. That's why we will be bringing you no celebrity stalking, no police blotter reporting, no hidden cameras. The only reality programming you'll find here is the kind that tells the stories of real people in this community and the challenges they face. Speaking of challenges, how'd that rush hour work out for you tonight? Are you one of tens of thousands who travel from the Southside to the Peninsula? If so, you know in your bones that the Friday commute will probably take you twice as long as normal. And I'm guessing if you make that trek, you also know where the bottlenecks will be: the Twin Bridges, the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel, I-64 on the Peninsula. And even if you don't cross the harbor, your crosstown commute is getting increasingly grim. And now we're just talking about rush hour. We're not even talking about the 900,000 people who it's now estimated will need to leave the region if a major hurricane comes our way. Lisa Godley has a look at a transportation system that's going from bad to worse.
More than 50,000 people jump in their vehicles and drive from the South Side to the Peninsula and vice versa each and every day. And most of the time, their commute looks like this.
An extra hour in the car going to work in the morning takes away from our family and our private lives. Extra hour getting back from work to home in the evening takes away from our children and their education.
For years, local leaders like Newport News Mayor Joe Frank and other members of the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission have been trying to figure out how to fix our transportation woes. A 2002 referendum that would have imposed new taxes to pay for 6 new road projects was greeted with a resounding no by voters. And now a new transportation authority to impose taxes and tolls has been shot down by the state Supreme Court. In a 23-page opinion, Justice S. Bernard Goodwin wrote, the General Assembly may not delegate its taxing power to a non-elected body. So now we begin again, leaving upgrades to Route 460, I-64 on both the Peninsula and South Side, both the downtown and midtown tunnels, and I-664, including the Monitor Merrimack Memorial Bridge, sitting in limbo.
We need to take action, and we need to do it now.
One member of the now powerless Regional Transportation Authority, Hampton Councilman Charles Sapp, believes in order to move forward, we need to slow things down a bit.
There is a strong and growing public sentiment that this package of projects is not the right package, and that the funding is not the right funding, and most of all, that the public is not involved in putting together what they conceive or perceive as being best for the region.
Transportation Authority Chairman Norfolk Mayor Paul Frame does not believe that pumping the brakes on the 6 road projects or changing them at this point is the way to go. According to the most recent long-term estimates, using 4% for inflation annually, the current project's $9 billion price tag will increase dramatically if we postpone too long. For every month we wait, it will cost an additional $30 million. That's an extra $360 million a year. Some lawmakers are hoping we can find a statewide solution to fix the problem. Others, like State Senator Harry Blevins, aren't holding their breath.
I agree with it. It should be a statewide plan. I think you're optimistic if you think that it's going to happen. And I think you need to understand that. The House has never, ever agreed to a statewide plan in the 11 years I've been there.
Paul Frame says this region could learn a lot from voters in Northern Virginia.
Their transportation crisis is actually worse than ours. They understand the need for a fix. They have gotten it that the state, folks who live in the western and southern part of the state are not going to come to their rescue, that if they are going to have roads, that they're going to have to pay for them. That may not be the Virginia way, but it is the reality of today. And the folks in Hampton Roads need to understand that as well.
Meanwhile, the problem of tie-ups, backups, and congested roads continues to cost drivers time and businesses money. For What Matters, I'm Lisa Godley.
And joining us tonight to talk about where we go from here and more importantly how we get there, the chair of the Senate Transportation Committee, Senator Yvonne Miller, who also represents Norfolk's 5th senatorial district. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
We're also happy to have the vice chair of the House Transportation Committee. That's Delegate Glenn Oder. He represents the Peninsula's 94th district. Thanks for being with us.
Happy to be here.
Also happy to have with us tonight Norfolk Mayor Paul Frame. He chairs the Hampton Roads Transportation Authority. Good to have you with us tonight, Mr. Mayor. Good
Thank
to talk to you. We're talking about this issue of where we go from here with transportation. And Glenn Oder, I have to just remind you of something I heard you say last week. You said, and I quote, "This may be Hampton Roads' darkest hour."
Well, certainly the loss of the Hampton Roads Transportation Authority by the Supreme Court ruling is something which is going to have a tremendous effect on the ability for us to fund the projects. And so that's what I mean when I say that. It's not so much that we lost the Hampton Roads Transportation Authority. That what's the problem is that we lost the funding. And so when you lose the funding, then you no longer have a way to pay for the roads. And so we have nowhere to go from here now until we readdress or figure out where the funding is going to come from.
And so as you look at those options, Senator Miller, what do you see? What are you talking with your colleagues about when you consider where we go from this project this project of six packages or 6 project package that was $6 billion in 2002 and according to Lisa Godley is now $9 billion?
Well, I think the important thing to remember is this is a 2-part problem. The first part is that without statewide transportation to take care of the maintenance drain on the construction fund, we have a more serious problem than the public is aware of. The second part of the problem is that in Hampton Roads, we are in gridlock. And unless we do something about those projects that have been through the process, and also do something in a separate way to deal with the Hampton Roads bridge tunnel problem, we will have more difficulty than we can imagine. The real solution to this is money. And the problem that we have statewide is that everyone wants transportation fixed. They can't agree on how to pay for it.
So a 2-step solution from where you stand.
Yes.
The statewide first and then a regional solution on top of that. And yet you heard, I think it was Senator Blevins say that a statewide plan, that's optimistic to think that that's going to happen. Hasn't happened in 11 years that he's been watching it.
Well, certainly what Senator Miller said is true, is that we have a problem with the transportation maintenance fund is getting to the point now where it can no longer support the actual cost. So we keep raiding from construction money to pay for the maintenance because state law says you have to do the maintenance first. So we do have a problem there. But in Hampton Roads, there's no getting around the fact that the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel has got to be addressed. And I think that the Peninsula has spoken up loud and clear in terms of their rejection of the Hampton Roads Transportation Authority and the taxes and the fees, that until the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel becomes part of the package or is done as a separate package, which I believe is really the direction we should go in, until the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel is addressed, I'm not sure how we get anywhere.
There's no question about the fact that the call for the HRBT to be part of any transportation solution is growing louder by the day. Lisa Godley had an opportunity to talk with First District Senator John Miller, and he says it has to be part of the plan.
You don't address transportation problems in Hampton Roads and not include the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel. You can't do it. It is the choke point for folks that live on the peninsula. And so if that's not addressed, we're not doing anything to solve transportation problems. You know, when you look at the projects that are peninsula projects, there are 2. The third crossing, which nobody really believes it's going to be built, and if it is, all that's going to do is put 1,000 trucks a day on Interstate 64 going through our communities. And the other one is the widening of Interstate 64. Now, we've lived through the widening of 64 in the past. It has not gone well. So the feeling on the peninsula is there's nothing really of benefit to us in this package. There's a great sucking sound from the peninsula to the Southside where the money from the peninsula is going to pay for those Southside projects. And we really get very little in return.
It's First District Senator John Miller. Mayor Frame, you've just heard Delegate Oder say he doesn't think this can happen without the HRBT being part of the plan. Senator Miller says the same thing. I know as chair of the Transportation Authority, you're hearing that loud and clear as well.
We conducted public hearings both on the Peninsula, and I say the Transportation Authority, and on the Southside. We did hear concerns about the bridge tunnel. The package that is included in the Transportation Authority's build package was essentially the MPO program, the Metropolitan Planning Organization. It's the same package that was included in the referendum bill. The General Assembly put it in this bill. They've adopted it. It was a program that is a system-wide approach to solving traffic problems throughout Hampton Roads.
And one that's been approved by the federal government.
Not just at one choke point. I mean, you know, the federal government, the Federal Highway Administration, VDOT, everyone has looked at it, would come down and tell you that at the third crossing in all of its stages, which has about 6, actually gives you 5 times more mobility. But, I mean, we understand that we need solutions and we need resolutions. And if we can move forward with the MPO plan and then come back and look at a separate project, which is the bridge tunnel expansion, then I think we would all be well served by that. So you're not going to get any resistance from the Transportation Authority or from the MPO as long as the MPO plan, which has been well-reasoned, well-researched, it's been a product of study since actually, you know, since 1993, I think, is when it first came on the table all the way through, that it is a fiscally constrained plan, by the way. You just don't get the bridge tunnel, but you got to pay for it. You know, so you have to say, okay, we need a solution to the choke point at the bridge tunnel. What is the solution? What are the alternatives? What do we have to do, you know, to relieve some of the congestion there, separate and apart from what the third crossing is going to do? But then you have to have a revenue stream. Yeah. And if we can, let's get about looking at that.
But if we have had trouble finding revenue stream for the 6 projects, now we have this thing, it sounds like you're entertaining about the idea of having the 6 and then looking at adding the HRBT as a separate project. Where do we find the money for that if we can't find the money for the other 6?
You know, the easy part of my life is, you know, trying to come up with a plan, and then the General Assembly has to try to fund it.
Fair enough. Well, we'll turn to this side of the table.
But there, in the present plan, it's not contemplated that the bridge tunnel would be tolled. You could toll the bridge tunnel, for instance. Generally, a toll will pay for at least a third of the project. In this instance, because of all the cars, it might pay for more. I mean, there are ways to get there as long as you consider it a priority.
Delegate Oder, what do you think about that idea?
Well, I've already talked with our congressional delegation, Thelma Drake in particular, and she has alerted me to the fact that in '09 they will be coming up with another federal authorization package. I understand in the past Hampton Roads has not had a whole lot of that money come our way. It's time for that money to come our way now. I think last year or last time it was done, we got $35 million. We need $2 billion this time. And I hope people understand that it was billion with a B. But I think that, that we need to work with our congressional delegation and with our new senators to ask for a huge federal allocation, get as much as we possibly can. The state gets $1 billion a year in federal money that goes towards highway projects and so forth. I think he who screams the loudest can get part of that money. And then if we can put those 2 pots of money together, I fully expect that you'll probably look at tolls on the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel.
On the new or on the existing?
Well, in order to build the new Hampton Roads Bridge, you'll have to toll the whole Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel.
Okay.
But I think those 3 sources of money that I just described can be put together and can actually make this a separate project and be done much, much sooner than previously thought.
What do you think about that, Senator Miller?
It's an interesting idea. One of the things I know is that politics is the art of the possible. Anything is possible when you get 140 legislators together. One of the known facts is that Northern Virginia has the largest number of elected people in Richmond. And Northern Virginia will have a solution partially to its problems. The important thing is to see how the Hampton Roads legislators will be able to work with the Northern Virginia legislators in a way that will bring about a solution for both areas. That's more difficult because the thing that is difficult for us at the moment is with our projects spelled out the way they are, by trying to add a new thing as an add-in to that is going to require more money. And so the people who are talking with the Northern Virginia legislators must be very skillful in order to help them understand why it's important for both parts of that golden crescent to have excellent transportation. It's possible.
Do you have the sense that they need us as much as we need them in that conversation?
No, we need them more than they need us. Yeah. Because of the magnitude of the delegation and because of the history of working together on transportation projects, and because they are donors to the rest of the state, they are now saying to the rest of the state, we have helped you in so many different ways. It's now our time to have help with our transportation problems.
It's a fascinating situation in which we find ourselves, and boy, we probably could have done this show, changed the price tags, and done it 5 years ago, and been in many respects in the same place. As a political issue, Mayor Frame, it sounds like all three of the folks at this table are well versed in the art of politics, and it sounds like, at least the way I heard it described last week, the strategic solution, the better strategic solution, is the 6 packages and the third crossing. But the political reality is that the HRBT may need to be part of this process.
If what you're talking about is adding a 7th project to the 6 projects which are contained in, the NPO program, then I think we can talk about that for sure. I think I heard Senator Miller say, maybe you needed that and not the third crossing. I don't think any of the folks who have studied it would go in that direction. If you're talking about a widening,
you don't think that they would go for the idea of the HRBT in lieu of the third crossing?
That's right, and that's not what I'm hearing Delegate Oder say either, or Senator Miller. And as a standalone project, if the federal government will assist us, together with tolls and some other revenue from the Commonwealth, then a widening at the HRBT is certainly possible. I want to say something else, though. When the HRBT expansion was studied back in 93, 94, all the way to 97,
yes,
and all of the environmental impact studies were done, I mean, one of the reasons that the HRBT failed was the amount of environmental impact on the Norfolk side. There were at least at last count, 138 homes that had to be condemned. There, and there are probably more now. So there have to be a lot of considerations. If what you're talking about is one tube that would give you 2 lanes, one in each direction, or maybe, if some brilliant engineer can figure out how to, reverse them, from time to time, I think you can get 1 lane down the median there without doing the environmental violations that everyone was concerned about, including the federal government. Yeah. If you want to do 1 lane, and then this modeling I've seen flushes enough traffic through the bridge tunnel and the third crossing that both of these choke points then reach something like level C service, which means that they're both work, and they work well. Actually, you have extra capacity at both locations if we're smart enough to do this the right way. I've always been, quite frankly, Glenn, if the solution is let's do both of them, then we'll work just as hard as we can to get them done. Believe me.
Well, that's wonderful to hear the mayor say we're going to work as hard as we can to get it done. He's exactly right. If we've paired, the original Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel was 3 additional tubes, and that's of course that was in lieu of doing the third cross or anything else. If you just paired it back, and what I'm finding is that he's exactly right. If we had 1 tube and we use it with a lane going in each direction, then we end up reducing the congestion on there, so the road improves to a level C, which is a vast improvement over what it is right now. And it's a fascinating opportunity to work together, and I'm glad to hear the mayor say that. I think we're making real progress on identifying this as a separate standalone project. Let's get the federal money involved, the state money involved, and let's see if we can't do something that doesn't do all the violence that the original plan did to the homes over in the Norfolk side.
So to make sure that what we're talking about is those original 6 projects and this limited expansion of the HRBT.
There's been way too much work that's gone into those 6 projects. There's too many evacuation plans and economic development opportunities and so forth that are all wrapped up in those projects. We don't want to do any, I don't want to do any violence to those 6 plans. And we can talk all day long about how we prioritize them, whether it's the third crossing or 460 or whatever. But the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel needs to be reconsidered as a standalone project, adding a single tube, and one that can be done as much as possible within the existing right-of-way.
And so as you look at that, it seems like there's also then that opportunity, and you've referred to the federal legislators as well. I've always been interested in the idea that we don't seem to have as much, maybe I'll ask you, do we have enough involvement from our federal legislators on this in a focused, coordinated way, which it sounds like you're now proposing going forward.
Well, that's exactly what I'm proposing. I mean, how did the Springfield interchange get built? How did the Woodrow Wilson Bridge get built? I mean, there are projects which rise to the level of federal significance. And one of the things that we learned just the other day was that you know, we're not done with BRAC. I mean, BRAC is going to continue to occur, and we're going to have to live with BRAC the rest of our lives. One of the things that BRAC looks at is that the infrastructure that supports the military operations. If we don't deal with with our infrastructure, with our roads, it could put us back on the list for BRAC. And so we clearly need to address this issue, and I think stepping up and asking the federal government to help is exactly what we should be doing.
You know, it seems to me as well, just looking at this whole issue over these many years, that one of the things that seems true is that the maps and the plans are well known by folks like you, whose business it is to know this level of detail. But there's been a real struggle getting that conversation to the people who are sitting in the traffic, to John Q. Public, if you will. That conversation, and it is a very complex issue, no question about it. Mr. Mayor, it's been difficult to get that.
Yeah, I think that
across.
has been a failing of the MPO to communicate efficiently with the public about what the transportation plan is. And we're looking at that, and as the planning district hires a new director, we're giving a lot of thought as to how to better communicate with the community. The MPO is the organization who's charged by the federal government with coming up with a long-range transportation plan for the region. Not many people even know about us, quite honestly, and we come up with a $9 billion set of projects, but all of them have been vetted. They've been through the public hearing process. The major investment study that occurred as to where the selection of the new crossing of the harbor would go, which resulted in the selection of what they call Alternative 9 there, went on for years and had wide support for people who came to the public hearings. But the two public hearings, I think only 95 comments were received. And for a project that's by itself is over $4 billion. So we need to do a better job of reaching out to the public so they can understand what we're trying to accomplish. And in fact, like I said, these 6 projects form a system. If you pull one of them out, the system comes apart. So they all have to advance at the same time.
Well, Mayor Paul Frame, thank you very much for being with us tonight, and thank you for being with us from the Hampton Roads Transportation Authority as well. Delegate Oder, thank you for being with us. I'm going to let y'all talk after the show. Senator Miller, perhaps we could all get together after the show and maybe we'll move this thing forward. That would be devoutly to be wished, I suspect. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much.
The maps, the projects, the plans are well known to policymakers and fairly well known in the boardrooms of the most civically active companies in the region. But for most people, what to do about transportation is decidedly personal.
Well, I think public transportation is definitely a good option. There's been some talks about it, and I think that would definitely do some good for the transportation around through the tunnels, the area tunnels, and alleviate some of the traffic that we experience.
As far as traveling from the peninsula every day, I sit in the gridlock at the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel. I think that if we had another avenue from Hampton to Norfolk or another area to the Southside, that would alleviate some of the problems at the HRBT.
No, I wouldn't pay the toll. I'd probably go around, but I'd pay the gas tax.
And you're absolutely right. As a taxpayer, I don't want my taxes to increase. What I would expect from the management and leadership that is making those decisions is to do a better job managing the money that we already pay them.
Those responses got me thinking back to the 2002 referendum that would have raised the sales tax by 1%, dedicating $7 billion to Hampton Roads transportation over about 20 years. It went down to defeat 2-1, and the conventional wisdom was that the voters didn't want taxes then and they don't want them now. Well, there was certainly a fair number of no-taxers in the defeat, but there were also those who said they would be willing to pay taxes, but not to let the state slide on its transportation obligations by shifting the burden to localities, not for projects that didn't directly affect them, not if those dedicated funds were going to be diverted to other projects, not if VDOT didn't get its act together, and it has since, not if there weren't substantive changes in land use policies, not if there weren't a serious financial commitment to real mass transit, including an actual light rail system. What those more nuanced responses told me is that if we're to make progress this time around, we need to get more than the business community, lawmakers, and fervent anti-tax voices in the conversation. It'll take people like you, people who are fully capable, when given the facts, to make hard decisions, to share in sacrifice, to demand that the solutions we settle on are about more than pavement, to recognize that some simple changes in our travel habits can eliminate the need for some of that expensive asphalt, not all of it, but some of it, to demand that land use decisions in individual localities reflect an awareness of our regional realities. In short, to fundamentally rethink the way we live. We've left transportation to our lawmakers to solve, and we haven't sat down with our neighbors and our leaders to talk about where we go from here. And it's time for that conversation, and we need to bring our best and most thoughtful selves to it. Because, as Delegate Glenn Oder said recently, this is Hampton Roads' darkest hour, and we can do better. I'd be interested in knowing what you want to know about the transportation challenges facing this community. What's important to you? You can email us at whatmatters@whro.org. You can call us at 757-889-9437, or you can write to us at What Matters, 5200 Hampton Boulevard, Norfolk, Virginia, and we'll share some of your ideas on coming broadcasts. We'll see you next week when we'll talk again about what matters. Thanks very much for watching, and we hope you'll be back in touch with us soon.